I was sitting in the oncologist's office and getting the news that they were giving me a 15% chance of living 3 years. It was a big wake-up call. The great news is that was 7 years ago. So when you do the math, I did pretty good on those statistics. But during that time frame of when I went through chemo and, everything from, having the port surgically implanted in my chest and I had been my dad's full-time caretaker for his last 3 months when he passed away from lung cancer. He had that same port in his chest. And so, there was a lot of emotional stuff that I went through during that time. And of course, going through chemo, that's no fun. I spent 30 years in law enforcement. And before that, I was a firefighter and I still am an emergency medical technician and EMT. I've been one for over 35 years. And so I've always been the one to help people. And to be on the opposite end of that, where I was having to be cared for, that was a big shift for me. And I'm fiercely independent. And so what I was doing in between my recovery periods is I dove into neuroscience research and I stumbled on some things that were in different places and it was astonishing to me, but no one had put the pieces together for a full program on de-escalation using neuroscience, personality science, and core human drivers. Your brain can only be in one of two states. It can be an executive state where we are right now, we're having a wonderful conversation, or it can be in survival state, fight, flight, or freeze. What I realized is, hey, if I can find the ways to shift out of survival state into executive state, and I can do it like a light switch, if I can learn to control my own mind, then I don't have to live in fear. I can use the same techniques that we teach people to calm an angry person in 90 seconds or less to take care of my claustrophobia.
In today's episode, we're talking to Kerry Mensior, a veteran cop who now teaches conflict de-escalation.
You'll learn everything from how to resolve arguments with your partner to how to get out of a speeding ticket.
Stay tuned until the end for neuroscience-backed strategies applicable in high-stress situations, whether in your personal life or business. Can you share with us the story behind the founding of your nonprofit, the International Deescalation Association, or I think you call it IDEA, to shorten it?
Yeah, IDEA was, we formed as a nonprofit organization for one purpose, which was to provide de-escalation and communication skills to four main categories. K through 12 school teachers, because dealing with misbehavior in the classroom and being able to not have to send a kid to the principal's office solves a really, really critical problem, which is the school to prison pipeline. The other three groups that we work primarily with are all first responders, and that's police, fire, and medical services, whether it's paramedic in the back of an ambulance or a hospice worker who's going in to help take care of grandpa in somebody's home, or a nurse or a doctor in a hospital setting. Now, out of those four areas, there's a couple of other groups of people that we help. As an example, flight attendants, because I always say there's no cover at 37,000 feet. The flight attendants have to deal with disruptive people, and they're not going to be able to get any assistance. It's them, and maybe if they're lucky, a passenger floating around. And then some business owners have come to us because we focus so heavily on neuroscience, so the neuroscience of sales. But those aren't our main focuses. The main focuses are school teachers and first responders.
So could you share, you mentioned neuroscience, could you share a little bit about your background and what led you to start IDEA?
Yeah, the first kind of inklings of IDEA came out of personality science. There was a personality assessment that we use in our training, and it's called BANK code, BANK code. Bank, like go to the bank and get money. It was originally developed as a sales training system. And what we saw was the ability for primarily first responders to be able to do a rapid personality assessment and be able to speak the language that the other person can best hear. The cool thing about bank code is, out of over 200 personality assessments out on the market, it's the only one that is scientifically validated to predict the buying behavior of a client in 90 seconds or less. You say, well, Kerry, that's great if you're, if you're selling something, if you're, in real estate, or if you're a financial planner and you need to connect with a client and bring them, to convince them you are the best person to handle their future and their finances. But how does that work for a police officer? Well, if you can determine what's going to help somebody say yes to something that on the surface is against their best interest, which is giving money away, then that means we can get somebody to turn around, put their hands behind their back, get them in handcuffs without having to use force. It's everything is a sale, whether you're getting your kids to eat their vegetables at night or brush their teeth before they go to bed, or you want to go see a particular movie and maybe your spouse does or doesn't. Everything in life is a sale. So bank code translates really well because it's all about communication skills. That was the very first part. And then something very interesting happened, which was in 2016. I was in the shower and I was drying off and I felt a lump on my leg. And I thought, gosh, that lump wasn't there yesterday. And so it just so happened that I was able to get in to see my doctor in 4 days on a cancellation. So 15 days later, the doctor called me and he says, Kerry, I need you to sit down. I said, go ahead, doc. He said, no, I need you to sit down. And he had just had this really serious tone in his voice. He said, doc, I work graveyard shift. It's like 3 a.m. for me. I'm laying down. Is that okay? I'll sit up if you want me to, but I'm laying down. And he started laughing and he said, I can't believe I'm laughing when I'm telling you this. And so I knew what the answer was. He said, we need you to get you scheduled for an oncology appointment. I said, okay. Well, 7 days later, I was sitting in the oncologist's office and getting the news that they were giving me a 15% chance of living 3 years. And it was a big wake-up call. And the great news is that was 7 years ago. So when you do the math, I did pretty good on those statistics. But during that time frame of when I went through chemo and, everything from, having the port surgically implanted in my chest, and I had been my dad's full-time caretaker for his last 3 months when he passed away from lung cancer. He had that same port in his chest. And so, there was a lot of emotional stuff that I went through during that time. And of course, going through chemo, that's no fun, but I needed something to be able to put my mind to, because I spent 30 years in law enforcement. And before that, I was a firefighter, and I still am an emergency medical technician and EMT. I've been one for over 35 years. And so I've always been the one to help people. And to be on the opposite end of that, where I was having to be cared for, that was a big shift for me. And I'm fiercely independent. And so what I was doing in between my recovery periods is I dove into neuroscience research. I wanted to learn more about bank code. Bank code had a white paper behind it. And I started reading abstract after abstract after abstract of neuroscience papers. And I stumbled on some things that were in different places, and and it was astonishing to me, but no one had put the pieces together for a full program on de-escalation using neuroscience, personality science, and core human drivers, which are the 3 pillars that all of IDEA's instructional courses are on. We only teach those 3 things. We don't teach tactics. We don't teach the physicality of what do you do if somebody attacks you. There's plenty of be your own bodyguard courses that you can go to, but nobody else teaches how to reach inside somebody else's head, flip a switch, and they don't even know that you did it. They just know that they feel better. And then they attach that good feeling to you because you're the one that helped them feel better. and how to speak in the language that the other person can best hear, speak to their values, who they are as a person, and then know what's motivating them and what's driving them so you understand where they're coming from. That allows you to control your mind. It allows you to heavily influence and persuade their mind and to really create rapport with somebody. And it helps with communication, de-escalation, and negotiation. So that's kind of the long story behind how IDEA came to be.
Yeah, I wanted to. Sorry, go ahead. You go ahead.
Well, before we dive into, there's a lot to unpack there, but
Yeah.
before we dive into that, I just wanted to ask, and maybe this is a little too personal, but with the cancer diagnosis, how did neuroscience research help you handle that situation? And are there some key takeaways you think that you could give to other people who are going through a similar situation?
Oh, Erica, what a beautiful question. Here's the really short answer. Your brain can only be in one of two states. It can be an executive state where we are right now. We're having a wonderful conversation, or it can be in survival state, fight, flight, or freeze. It literally is, it's one or the other. It's so simple. And so how neuroscience helped me in that time and what encouraged me and motivated me to keep diving into it more was the fact I realized that when I got scared, and when you think about it, the nurse who's administering the chemo dresses up in highly protective equipment, and there's like hazardous warning symbols, caustic substance type warnings all over the place, and yet they're going to put this inside my body. That it is just it screws with your mind. And then the effects of the chemo and the side effects. And so what I realized is, hey, if I can find the ways to shift out of survival state into executive state, and I can do it like a light switch. Now, sometimes it's like a light switch, sometimes it's like a dimmer switch. But if I can learn to control my own mind, then I don't have to live in fear. I don't have to live in overwhelm. I don't have to live in anxiety. And that was the core thing. And let me give you a quick example. What I didn't tell you yet is before I was a firefighter and before I was a cop and EMT, I was in the military. I spent 9 years in the Navy. I was on nuclear powered submarines. Did 8 deployments in my 9 years. And on about my 4th or 5th deployment, we were in port and we had to do some maintenance on the submarine. And I had to go into what's called the main ballast tank. Now there's 6 of these on the ship. And they fill with water, and that's what makes the submarine go under the water. It literally, you are sinking the submarine by flooding a tank. So I'm going into this tank, and I'm near the bottom of the tank, and the part that was keeping the water from coming in, it slipped, and the tank began to flood. And I couldn't get out of the tank. I was trapped in the tank, and the ship. The boat was actually, we were tied alongside a pier, and the boat was actually sinking. And I knew what was going to happen. There was a little hole at the top of the tank that I needed to get to, and there's a valve that goes in there that closes, and it keeps air inside the tank so the water can't come in. Well, you've got one sailor, and you've got a multi-billion-dollar submarine with torpedoes, 156 nuclear warheads. They're not going to let this thing sink. Not when there's only one sailor at risk. So I knew what was going to happen if I didn't get out of that tank. Spoiler alert, I managed to get out, but it was a close call. And ever since then, and interestingly enough, the older I got, the more progressively worse it got, but I have confined space issues. Some people would call it claustrophobia. And that day, It was super, super hot. We were down in Georgia near the Florida border. It was a summer day in the black submarine, and it was just baking hot inside that tank. Well, anytime I'm in an airplane and it gets really hot, it's like a flashback. I can use the same techniques that we teach people to calm an angry person in 90 seconds or less to take care of my claustrophobia. How do I get to Cancun when it's blazing hot inside the airplane and that door closes and I'm 30 rows back and I'm looking down this long tube that's now getting more narrow and I can't get off for the next 6 hours? Well, I need to control this. I need to be able to control my mind so that I can actually enjoy the airplane flight. That's the sort of thing, that's the sort of benefits both. And I began that in the cancer journey of how do I get rid of fear? How do I get through this stuff that they're pumping in me and how it makes me feel afterwards? And it led to how do I deal with my claustrophobia so I can still travel and still help people and still present at conferences? And now, how do we talk somebody off a bridge who wants to jump in their life, or calm somebody down who's got a gun in their hand or a knife or a baseball bat? And the cool thing is, it's all the same simple techniques.
I mean, this is an idea. You can shoot me down if you
Okay.
like. It would be really interesting, I think, for the podcast and for, I think, our audience as well, if we can do a role play
Okay.
where you are trying to do something crazy, or you're pretending to be a difficult customer or something like extreme, like jumping off the bridge. And I want to see how Kerry handles that situation. And we can capture it, right? And then we'll edit out whatever we don't need. And I think it'll be very powerful because people can actually learn the techniques that he uses. What do you think, Kerry? Do you think it's a good idea?
I'm open to that.
All right.
Should we do it? What do you think? I mean, do you think
Yeah,
it's a
let's
good
try
idea?
it. Let's try it.
Okay.
So how about this? How about this, Eric and Nabi? How about we choose something? And for the listeners, by the way, this is completely off the cuff. It's completely improv, which I absolutely love because that's what real life is.
Right.
So maybe, Erica, pick a situation that the average person would run into. And I'll give you some prompt ideas. You're running up to the grocery store for a gallon of milk and somebody cuts in line or takes your parking spot, or you have spent the last 45 minutes on the phone with waiting to talk to customer service. You got disconnected 3 times and you've been transferred 14 times. And now you're finally talking to somebody and you're about ready to lose your mind. The average run of the mill, or maybe your husband didn't take out the trash cans again, and you've got another week before the trash is coming.
I'm going to veto that.
It's going to smell at the house. There's all sorts of things. So you can do personal relationships. You can do somebody you just randomly meet. Work relationships. There's a lot of conflict in the workplace between coworkers. So
right.
With all of those ideas, you choose what you want. We'll rock and roll because it's the same techniques. It doesn't matter whether it's a fight over a parking spot, or my laptop fan is making noise and I need to get it fixed and it's about ready to go out of warranty, or honey, you didn't take out the trash. It's all the same techniques.
So should we role play a fight between the two of us?
No, I was thinking why don't we do a real life situation with
should we take a situation from my business?
Right, the business situation we're dealing with. Like it's a life situation you're dealing with. That would be a good use case.
Okay.
Just change the name of the person.
All right. Well, we'll be a little bit careful because I have a ongoing conflict in my own business right now. So this would be interesting to role play, but change the details a little bit.
You be that person and I'll be you.
Okay.
Or is it you're upset? Is it they're upset with you, or vice versa, or just both?
They're upset with us. Yeah.
Okay. So I'll be you and you be them. Now be easy because you know their side.
Okay.
And if
So
there's
are you
any
going to help out or
background,
just me?
I'm the moderator.
Okay. All right. So just for some background for everyone who's listening and for you, I have a business. I buy and sell land, and some of our sales are with owner financing. So we're doing financing, and we do use a third party loan servicing software. But one customer, it's going to be difficult because.
and then one last clarifying question, because
Mhm.
I see the scenario. It's real clear. You've explained it so well. Thank you for that. One clarifying question is, has everything been paid, or is this still an ongoing thing?
This is currently an ongoing dispute, so I'm taking a little bit of a risk.
Let me
I'm
let
talking
me
about
let
it
me.
publicly, but
I mean,
Yeah,
we're not
no, it's
she,
okay.
disclosing names. That's
yeah,
fine.
but so according to my records, there is still a little bit owed on the loan, not that much.
Okay.
We are probably just going to go ahead and try to wrap up the loan without
No, we'll write off.
write off that little bit, but that is what the records that I have and the third party servicing software shows. But she believes that there are payments missing or that the software isn't accounting
Right.
for the total properly.
Right.
So she believes she's actually paid more. Okay. So, so I just got another late payment from the servicing software, and I'm really upset by it because I fully paid off the loan 3 months ago, and you have no right to say that I am late or that the loan is close to default. And if you do default the loan and try to take the property back, I am going to bring this to the state Supreme Court.
You are really frustrated, and you're also worried about some legal action, and you're projecting into the future the bad things that can happen, and that's got to be wearing on you. It's probably even keeping you awake at night.
Well, yes, I'm very upset. I mean, I already paid off the loan, and your your loan servicing software is not accurately representing the payments that I made, and no one is listening to what I'm saying. And I think you owe me money, but you're telling me that I still need to pay more toward the loan. And this is, I don't know if this is deliberate fraud or what is going on, but I need this. I need this to be resolved, or like I said, I'm going to take legal action.
Having this feel like it's being dragged out when you feel like you've paid everything that you're supposed to have, coupled with the frustrations of the interface with the software, that doesn't make the experience that we would want you to have. That's not at all the experience that anyone would want to have. So if you'd be open to it, can we talk about the software first?
Sure, we can talk about it, but I do want to know what you're going to do to rectify the situation.
Absolutely. And I want to make sure I understand all of your concerns before we even talk about solutions. I want to make sure that I understand where you're coming from on each of these points. Is is that okay with you?
Well, I think in my previous emails, I already explained everything, but I can try and explain it all again. I mean, I don't know what more I need to do here.
So let's talk about the software first. The software, I agree with you completely. Your points about the software are very valid. It's kind of confusing in some areas. Now, there's a couple things we can do. We can either have somebody that represents the company that has the software walk you through and explain things, or I can do it by sharing my screen with you on a computer, like on a Zoom call. There's a couple different options that we have to be able to do that. The first thing is to make sure that you're able to see the documentation for all the payments. that's when it comes down to this, you think that you've paid too much. And it sucks when you think that you've overpaid for something and there's other frustrations that pile in on top of that.
I mean, we can do that, but I've looked at the software, I've looked at the billing statements, and there are payments that are not being represented in the software. And I think that they're being removed. So I think that there's fraud going on here.
Well, the concern about the fraud, that's huge. And we would definitely want to check into that too, because if there's a mistake that's happening either in the software or on the financial end of things, absolutely that needs to get ironed out. Let me ask you this. Would it be possible for you to provide, let's say, an Excel spreadsheet or a Google sheet where you can list out the payments and the amounts, the date of the payment and the amount of the payment that show on your end that you're not seeing in the software? Because that way we both can work together to be able to hunt down what you're seeing as being missing and what the software is either not reflecting or is reflecting maybe in a different area. Because I do know that software sometimes, even to me, is confusing.
Yes, I can do that, but I don't think I owe you my bank statements or accounting. I think you need to prove to me that that there aren't extra payments that you're removing from the account.
Your concern about providing bank statements, it makes sense because you've got some personal information on there. And there's a couple ways to work around that. We could either have you literally take a black Sharpie marker, or if you're familiar with Adobe Acrobat, you can redact out, you can black out things that are personal, because we don't want to invade your privacy at all. And that can make it feel really uncomfortable when you're providing bank statements. The other thing that can happen is if your bank can provide, with a simple phone call, if you call them up, your bank can provide transaction details just for those specific payments that you made. Now, your request for us to say for payments we've received, we absolutely can do that. And that's what's reflected in the software. And so, again, either I or a representative from the company can walk you through where you can see firsthand yourself where those payments that came in are reflected and where there's gaps. So that's where working together will really help to just make this. We want to solve this problem. Absolutely, your satisfaction with us is important. Our trust with each other is important. And we're willing to put the time in to be able to make that happen.
Okay.
Yeah.
You think that was
that was good.
enough? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about that. Let's talk about what
that's what I'm gonna
so-
suggest. What are the techniques you
Yeah.
use? Yeah, please.
Yeah. So the first thing is some people will refer to it as empathy, and there's different kinds of empathy. We call it strategic empathy. Now, there's a guy by the name of Chris Voss. He's a former FBI negotiator, and he teaches a lot about negotiation in business. He uses the term tactical empathy. And the reason we use strategic versus tactical is this. Tactical is in the moment. Strategic is what's your long-term goal. We work with people that they're looking at the long game. They're not looking at one negotiation. They're looking at what is the relationship going to be like with this person. And that's the difference between strategy and tactics. Strategy is long-term, tactics is just for that one particular instance. Mm-hmm. So strategic empathy is acknowledging to that person that you understand their point of view. Now, there's this lady, her name is Brene Brown. She's a very, very famous lady, and she's talked a lot about empathy. And there's actually like a little cartoon thing on YouTube. You can look it up about empathy, and it's pretty informative. And the difference is this. Brene talks about going into the well and sitting in the well with the person and, being in their emotions. And we do not recommend that at all. And here's why. If you're a police officer or a firefighter or a medic and you're going to call after call after call, and you wrap yourself up in everybody's emotions at this call, and we go to horrific calls. Nobody calls 911 because they're having an amazing day and grandpa's turning 85 and come on over for his birthday and have a slice of cake. That doesn't happen, right? People call us and we walk into their homes when their lives are at their worst and their emotions are at the most extreme. So if we get wrapped up in the emotions of every single person we interact with, we would go into emotional burnout really, really quickly. So strategic empathy is nothing more. It's super simple concept that you're letting the other person know you understand how they feel. You're not feeling those things. You're indicating to them, you're communicating to them in a way that they can hear at a base level. And sometimes it's in the subconscious, unconscious, and non-conscious levels that you're there. Remember I talked about the executive state and survival state.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
The key part of your brain that's making the decision which state your mind is going to be in is called the amygdala. Amy G. Dalla. We call her Amy for short. Amygdala is the fear center of the brain. And Amy is asking one question 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. She never sleeps. She screws with your brain on a regular basis. That's why you wake up at 2:30 in the morning and you're like, what was that noise? Honey, wake up. I think I heard a noise. Because Amy is asking one question all day long. And that question is real simple. Am I safe? Am I safe? Another way to ask that is, are you a friend or are you a foe? Now, we're not necessarily friends with everybody, but what we do have to communicate to their brain is we are not a foe. We are not an enemy, because the brain doesn't differentiate between levels of friendship. The fear center doesn't anyway. The fear center just goes, are you an enemy or are you not? If you're not an enemy, you're a friend. It is black or white. You're a danger or you're not. So what we have to do is we have to communicate to their brain that we are not a danger, that they are safe. So I did that a couple of ways. First of all, I acknowledged the frustrations, and just hitting a couple of high points, giving your bank statements. Holy hell, there's a lot of fear that can come with that. You're gonna see that I have a credit card payment that's super high. You're gonna see that maybe I had a direct wire transfer to somebody that you know. You're gonna see that I have a porn channel subscription. You're gonna see that I paid how much in groceries. There's all sorts of reasons why people don't want to reveal their financials. So acknowledging that they don't want to do that, and then giving them the solution to be able to go, hey, here's how you can share just the information that's needed, and we don't have to go into all that other stuff. One of the last things that I said was, and that really put the icing on the cake for settling you out, Erica. By the way, I thought you were a really good actress. Was
Thank you.
when I talked about how important it is for our relationship and that we trust each other, and that trust is important to me. Now, at the very beginning, if you listen to this recording, you'll notice I almost never, I'll never say never and always, I try to avoid those, but I almost never use the word I or me. It was we and it was you. Because if I say something like, Erica, I understand I understand what you're feeling. I understand that you're frustrated. I understand this. I'm making it about me. And on a subconscious, unconscious, non-conscious level, your brain is going, oh, it's all about you. Fine. You're not a friend. But when I'm framing it as you, and I said, you're frustrated and you've spent a lot of time on this. If I can acknowledge the emotions that you're feeling, and so I'm not listening so much for your words. And this seems counterintuitive because we're taught listen carefully to what they're saying. Yes. But what we teach at IDEA is listen for the emotions they're feeling, not what they're saying. Because the words, Erica, you could say things that would trigger me into survival state. You could be completely offensive to me. I've had this happen if I made a traffic stop as a police officer. And I've had these happen, these exact phrases that I'm going to use with you. You only stop me because I'm Black. You only stop me because I'm Mexican. You only stop me because I'm white. I've had all of those said to me. Yes, people have said, you only stop me because I'm white. Now, the tone of voice that's used and the other things that followed sometimes were absolutely hateful. I joke that I learned Spanish from the people because I worked in San Diego. I learned, and we're so close to the border. San Diego and Tijuana are almost the same city. And I joked that I learned Spanish from the people in the back seat. My Spanish instructors came from the people in handcuffs behind me. And a lot of the phrases I heard and learned had the word madre in there. So understanding and communicating to the other person that you understand what they're experiencing goes a long way to telling Amy, the fear center of the brain, that you're not an enemy. Because, see, a friend understands where you're coming from. An enemy doesn't care. And again, we don't need to be best friends with somebody. In fact, this whole, in the entrepreneurial world, there's this big falsehood that's been put out for years. People have to know, like, and trust you to buy from you. That's a bunch of hooey. That is not true at all. What they do have to do is they have to trust you. That's it. They'll get to know you. They'll get to like you. That comes after the sale. What they have to do to buy from you is they have to trust you. Why do you think that social proof has become such a big deal? Anytime you hop onto a landing page, there's testimonial, 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 testimonial. Because they're trying to get you to trust them, to believe what they're saying. So it's not the know and the like. That comes later. It's all about the trust, which is why, to put the icing on the cake with our conversation and our role play, I used that word. And I talked about how the trust between us was important. The other thing that I'll say, and just to wrap this up, is tone of voice. Tone of voice, tonality is absolutely critical. And to give you an example, if I'm talking up here and I'm talking really fast, what that does is it automatically fires off your mirror neurons, and it actually causes your heart rate and your respiration rate to go up, and you feel a sense of anxiety. Literally, some people will feel it like in their chest when I just did that. But if I just slow my speech down a little bit and I lower my tone of voice, that also affects your mirror neurons, and you have no control over that. I am literally reaching inside your brain right now with a little bit of melody to my voice, a deepening of my tone, a slowing of the pace, the rate at which I'm speaking. I'm reaching in and I'm triggering your mirror neurons, and you can't do anything about it, but you feel more calm.
So that was great. I can see now that I handled this situation all wrong. I wish I could go back and redo it. at this point. But one thing I was just thinking is, in order to execute on this properly, it seems like the first step would need to be being able to control your own emotions so you can respond in the right way. And that was the problem I had when I didn't handle this situation the way I should have. So you talked about how you can switch off your amygdala in 90 seconds now, and that's how you handle your claustrophobia, how you got through the cancer diagnosis. So how can we do this so we can be better whenever there's a conflict?
Right.
Let me give you 2 quick ways. And literally, they're almost instantaneous. When I say you can calm an angry person in 90 seconds or less, I'll say this. We're talking about bringing the heat down. We're talking about on a gas stove, turning that knob and lowering the temperature. That doesn't mean we're necessarily going to be having ice cream with them and sitting around and talking about Sex in the City and the latest Suits episode that we just binge watched. But can we bring the heat down to where we can at least start to try and find a solution to the problem? Now, with that said, Erica, brilliant observation. You have to control your mind first. You have to shift out of survival state into executive state. So I'm going to give you 2 quick, easy ways to do this. When I say easy, I should say simple. They're not always easy because our emotions can just take over sometimes, and sometimes we have to fight that. Now, yesterday, I was headed to a meeting, and I got on the freeway, and when I pulled on, this is a long on-ramp that's uphill. So people, don't always go real fast because they're going uphill. And there was this car behind me that I saw. I don't know where he came from, but he dropped in behind me. Now this on-ramp has 3 lanes, and he was right on my butt. And I was moving along pretty quick, but I realized that to do the little zipper thing where people out of 3 lanes where it merges into one, they kind of all have to figure out where to go in this world, so we don't try and occupy the same physical space as another vehicle and cause a crash. The entire time this guy was on my butt, and I had to slow down a little bit. And as soon as we got to the top of the on-ramp, even before that separated lane area that's kind of a Y-shaped thing came to a single lane where you can now change lanes, he was over the simulated median and cutting through, and he was honking at me. I'm like, what the heck? I couldn't go anywhere. There was cars in front of me. And then he was zip, 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 zip. Now you got 2 choices in that situation. You can flip him off. You can scream and yell at him. And I was by myself in the car. And we all know we have said things and we have done things that we're not proud of when we're by ourselves in a car. As a cop for 30 years and a good portion of the time working traffic enforcement, traffic division, I was a accident reconstructionist, a collision investigator. I saw a lot of this happen. People just flying off the handle when they're by themselves, not so much when they're with other people. But what I did was this. I used my techniques, and the first one is called curiosity. And I said, and I do this even when I have somebody in the car, you can say it inside your head. It's even more powerful when you say it out loud. I am curious why that guy is driving that way. I wonder where he's going in such a rush. Maybe he's late for work, or he might even be headed for the hospital. You cannot be curious and in survival state at the same time. Your brain doesn't allow it. And then the next thing that I did, or you can do, I didn't need to do it yesterday because that flipped me from being irritated with them to back into executive state immediately. But if it's lingering, it's not quite done it for you, you can then go, well, I'm really glad with all of his cutting back and forth, I'm really glad he didn't hit anybody. And he's got some driving skills to be able to drive like that. So that's pretty cool. I'm glad that he developed those skills. Gratitude. You cannot be in gratitude and be in survival state at the same time. just like curiosity, your brain doesn't allow it. Because to be curious, you have to be safe to be curious. To be in gratitude, to be grateful for things, to be thankful for things, you have to be safe. So what you're doing is you're telling Amy, hey, ignore everything that's coming in from the 5 senses or 6 senses for some of us. Ignore all that. I'm telling you, it's okay. And Amy goes, okay, that's great. You tell me it's okay, then it's okay. Amy is not real smart. She's very, very observant, but she's not the sharpest tool in the shed. The great thing about that is you can reassure Amy, everything's good. We got this. And she'll go, oh, okay. And she'll put you back in executive state. Now, one thing I want to say about this whole Amy thing, when you're in survival state, the critical part about understanding that and the bad things that go along with survival state is this. Put your hands, both of you do this. Put your hand on your forehead like you're feeling like you have a fever. Right there, and you can put your hands down, right there is your prefrontal cortex, PFC for short, because prefrontal cortex takes a long time to say that. Your PFC electrically, it shuts off when you're in survival state. And PFC, that's where we get all of our executive functions, hence executive state when it's turned on. When we go into survival state, our PFC shuts off. It gets no power, which means your creativity, your ability to have empathy for another person, which means to connect with someone else. It's all gone. Your ability to reason through tough problems, to problem solve, goes away. It's gone because that's all here in your PFC. And it does a bunch of other things in that area of the brain. It affects how you access memory. And your fear center of your brain, by the way, is tied. It is connected directly to your hippocampus, which is your memory banks. And that's why sometimes you'll hear a song. You'll smell something, an odor. You'll hear a noise, and you'll be, bam, right back into a trauma situation. Just by a smell. There's a horrible thing that cops and firefighters have to respond to. And that's when someone has been badly burned. Mm-hmm. It's a very unique smell. And sometimes when there's a barbecue, and depending on what type of stuff is being thrown on the grill, it'll produce a smell that's very similar. And that will trigger me to an accident scene I responded to, or a house fire that I responded to that went badly. So there will be triggers for all of us. And when it sends us, when that sense comes in, Amy goes, danger, you're in danger. And I'm thinking, I'm at a freaking backyard barbecue. What the heck? I'm not in any danger. I got a beer in my hand. We're playing ball with the kids. They're splashing around and using squirt guns and water balloons. I'm not in any danger. Oh. And I need to tell Amy, it's cool. We got this. I hope that helps.
Yes, so maybe just to continue with so I can see how you would use curiosity when you're dealing with someone else. That seems maybe not easy to do, but at least intuitive. You're curious what the other person's actually thinking. Yeah. But I guess I'll be vulnerable again and say I'm actually in my 3rd trimester right now, and I just got some news that there may be some issues and I'll have to be induced early. So how would I use curiosity? Let's pretend that I go back to the doctor and my next appointment, they tell me things aren't looking good. We're going to need to induce because the baby's not getting the nutrients she needs. How do I use curiosity to keep myself calm and prepared and ready for that in a situation, that's more personal and doesn't have someone else involved.
Right. And I would also add that you have the option of using
That's
gratitude
true.
as well.
I guess I could use gratitude, but
Yeah.
that's
either tool works really well. And the first thing is this. First of all, congratulations. And this has to be weighing heavy on your mind. And the fact that you're able to continue doing podcasts and just all the million other things you probably have going on in life shows a lot about who you are as a person and how you show up in this world, to be able to have that stress and yet be able to continue on through other areas. So I just want to offer you a compliment on that.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So curiosity, if you were to use curiosity, one of the things that I will say for you in your particular situation, gratitude is probably going to be a better go-to. I am grateful for the doctor who's highly skilled. And here's one of the things you can do. It's also going to make the doctor's day. Doc, and you can say this at an appropriate time, maybe at the end of the appointment, maybe halfway through, you can, if you're starting to feel anxious, you can just interrupt the doctor at any time and go, "Doctor, I just want to say something. You've put a lot of time and effort into learning your craft, learning medicine. I want to thank you for putting the hours in and the work and the effort it took to get you to the skill level where you are right now. Just want to acknowledge that."
That's a really good tip.
Because what you've done is you have shifted your brain, because you're in gratitude. You've just shifted your brain into executive state. You have also, if he was any or she was anywhere near being away from executive state, it puts them back in, which means they can give you, think about this.
Yeah.
They can give you better medical advice. They can make better decisions. They can better problem solve. They can be more creative because you reach inside their head, flipped a switch. Because gratitude works both ways. When someone is expressing gratitude toward you for something that you've done, and you're honoring, not just, "Hey, that's a really cool shirt." Okay. "Oh, you have great eyes." Okay. I can't control anything about my eyes, and my shirt is just a blue shirt. But if you say, "That's a really cool shirt. You got good fashion sense. Where did you buy that at?" Your eyes are amazing. The time you took for the makeup to highlight them, it's just something you naturally have, but you took extra effort and it worked. Or your hair is beautiful. You must put time and effort into taking care of it. Because what you're doing is you're taking the compliment about the thing and you're expanding it to their values or their work or their effort or things that they've done. And that's gratitude. So a simple compliment. If I go up to Costco or a grocery store and I say to the clerk as they're doing things, a genuine, "How's your day been?" Not just, "How you doing today?" "How's your day been?" I'm like, "Oh, I just started. I don't know yet." "Well, I hope your shift is really, really good. And by the way, thanks for being so efficient here. You're just like burning through people. It's pretty cool. Thanks for making my visit here a little bit easier." It cost you nothing, but you just made their day. And guess what? You benefited as well. You just shifted you into executive state and you shifted them into executive state and you made them feel good about themselves. It's like it's exponential effect that you have on people. So for you, as you go through this really challenging time, and if it's any help, our daughter gave birth to our granddaughter, who's now 1 year old, just turned one. She was born at 25 weeks old. Had she been born day or two sooner, they would not have tried to save her.
Mm.
She was born at 6 months. They kept her in NICU until past her due date. So she spent over 3 months in NICU. That anxiety, that level of stress that you feel, when I offered my compliment to you earlier, it was genuine. I've lived through that. And as a parent, grandparent, I know what those concerns are. And so I don't offer that compliment lightly. And yet at the same time, anyone should be able to figure out the things that you're feeling with just taking 5 seconds, 10 seconds. And here's the cool thing. You can pre-plan this stuff too. If you know a friend of yours, you're going to be having a call with them and you know that they're going through some tough times. My assistant, she fell yesterday and broke her right ankle. She's sedated. She's in the emergency room until tomorrow. She did this yesterday. She's going to be in the emergency room. They can't operate on her for 48 hours. They're going to put a rod and screws in her ankle. She's going to be non-weight bearing for 3 months. Can I take, before I call her or send her a text message to check in, can I take 5 or 10 seconds and think, shoot, what would that be like if I was laying in the hospital bed? And acknowledge some of that for her and acknowledge, but this is going to be driving you crazy because I know you never stop working. And laying up in bed, that's going to drive you crazy. I know it did for me when I was going through chemo. When I didn't have the energy to get around, and the best I could do was read freaking research papers. How boring is that normally? Except when you're searching for a squirrel's looking for a nut. Can you take 5 or 10 seconds before you make that phone call, before you hop on that Zoom with a client and go, okay, what are they experiencing? And can I acknowledge that for them so that they know I understand it? Because just doing that emotional labeling is going to shift them into executive state. Because Amy says, oh, they're not an enemy. That must mean they're a friend. I hope that helps.
Yeah, that's very helpful and very profound. So thank you. Thank
you. We're
you
getting
for
a master class here.
Yeah, we're.
I'm curious to know, in your example that you used earlier, when you're in a plane and it gets really hot, do you employ curiosity or gratitude?
I'll say this. That's a good example of turning down the heat on a burner. I have had it take, I'll give you one example. I was flying out of Las Vegas. This was like my worst case scenario. I was flying out of Las Vegas. It was in the summertime, so the plane's automatically hot. And then we taxied out, and the pilot goes, oh, they're having some weather problems in San Diego, at which point I went, oh, that's a bunch of BS. San Diego doesn't have weather problems. Or they're having some weather problems in San Diego, and we're going to be sitting here on the runway. It could be as much as 90 minutes. Holy hell, what? And of course, the flight attendant's like, if everybody could please put their window shades down so the interior of the plane can begin to cool off. I'm like, oh, hell yeah. You, put your window shade down. You too. Hey, listen to her. That was like, so I being very honest, it might take me 20 minutes to get rid of it. But can I take it from a 12 on a scale of 1 to 10 and bring it down to a 2? I can do that relatively quickly. I use curiosity. I use gratitude. Man, I am so lucky. I love to travel. I'm getting to live my dream, and I get to fly to different places. I get to talk to people. I got my aisle seat that I really, really like. Honestly, shove me by the window and I have even more problems. And you can imagine why. I got my aisle seat. I'm comfortable. I got my snacks. I got my drink. The flight crew, they're pretty cool. They're, they're at least nice at a bare minimum, and a lot of gratitude. When I get home, I got a beautiful lady I'm going to. I got Quinn, who's literally the happiest baby, the happiest 1-year-old I've ever seen on this planet. I look at her and I go, "Hey, Munchkinlicious," and she just gets this big grin on her face, and she's beaming at me, and it just melts my heart. I think about that. I think about how lucky I am to be able to talk to different people in the world and be able to help them have better lives just by learning a little bit about their brain and giving them simple tools that came out of highly complex white papers. But I was able to get it to I'm just a knuckle dragging street cop. I got to be able to understand this in a moment of stress and crisis when somebody's got a weapon, and I got to decide whether I'm going to use deadly force. And I'm trying not to, because in my 30 years on the department, I was in 2 fatal officer-involved shootings. But I also get to say I've saved more people. I've saved more lives than I've taken, and that's not a bad balance to be in life. So curiosity, a lot of gratitude, reaching out to different places, not just what I have in that moment. And then there's another tool, which is just simply distraction. Can I open up my phone? Can I open up a tablet? Can I watch a funny video, a movie? I have one last thing that I'll talk about, which is creativity. Again, you can't be creative and be in survival state at the same time. So creativity. I'll open up the notes app on my pad and I'll go, okay, I got to do some podcast episodes. Who do I want? Who would be a great guest to have on my podcast? Or what topics should we talk about? Oh, I was thinking about developing a new training course. What would be really good to have as module titles? So I get creative in either what I'm going to train people on, or how I'm going to shift my training, do my training better, who I'm going to interact with, who I'm going to reach out to. Because again, that's a combination of curiosity and creativity. So when I'm in a really tough situation like that Vegas flight, plane super hot, we're going to be there for 90 minutes. I'm using every single tool at my disposal.
I wanted to go back to the personality test you mentioned, the bank code. Wanted to understand how that ties into what we have spoken until now.
Sure. And by the way, I'll give you guys the link where you can do your own bank code for free. I pay the subscription cost, so all of our students and your listeners can do this as well, can do as many personality assessments as they want for free. If you go to take a disc, sometimes it's as much as $75. Strengths Finder, which is another great assessment, you have to buy the book and then you get the code inside. It's about $20 or $25. So being able to do this. And the other thing is, the assessment is beyond free. It's very rapid. It's 90 seconds or less to do this. So let me tell you a quick story and tell you about 2 of the bank codes and how this would have helped me earlier in my career as a police officer. So I was setting up for a DUI checkpoint. We were downtown San Diego. I had put traffic cones across a road at an intersection, and to close it off, we were going to be doing the DUI checkpoint on the side road. So I'd coned off the street. Nobody could come down it. So I'm just walking down the middle of the street, hidey-hoing my butt down. It's just before dark. There's still plenty of daylight. And I hear behind me, whoa, whoa, whoa. And I turned around and there's this car coming straight at me. It squirted through the cones. I'm like, whoa. And I jumped out of the road and I'm yelling at him, stop your car. And I'm all in my cop mode. And it's a red Lamborghini. Beautiful car. I start walking to the car and I'm about 20 feet from the car and the driver's window goes down. Hand comes out and he's got a driver's license in his hand. I'm like, oh, okay. I can see how this is going to go. And I get up to the back of the car and a really snotty, entitled, holier than thou voice. He goes, just write the ticket. Now, this is an action this is personality type, and bank code, the A stands for action. These are folks they believe in fun, freedom, flexibility. Think of a race car driver or an actor or an actress in Hollywood. Many of them are action personality types. They don't believe in rules. And if there are rules, they apply to other people, not to them. The B in bank code is blueprint. Blueprints are very much within the box. Think of a blueprint an architect would draw to build a building. Everything has to be measured out. Everything has a reason. Blueprints, as an example, they're the ones that are always early to everything. Like if you were to go to a business meeting with a blueprint and you were there half an hour early, they're going to walk in 30 to 20 minutes early, anywhere in there. If you happen to be there first, they can be 20 minutes early and they'll go, "Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry I'm late." Blueprints are all about safety and procedures and policies and making sure that there's low risk or no risk. Well, a police officer is a typical blueprint type personality, at least situationally, if nothing else. So as a blueprint, I'm stopping an action. And by the way, blueprints and actions, they're opposite of each other. Exactly opposite as you just heard in my description. Blueprints are all inside the box. Actions, there is no box. So we are literally two opposite personalities now interacting. And I'm going to add in one other thing without diving super deep, but there's 3 different levels in a relationship: a parent, an adult, and a child. And I'm coming from a parent approach. The Lamborghini driver is from a child. So I've got a parent-child relationship formed. I'm the parent, he's the child. And how do you think somebody who has no rules in their life reacts to being treated like a child? Quite frankly, children don't like being treated as children. I tell my 5-year-old grandson what to do, and he's like, "No." Everything is no, no, no. So if in 90 seconds or less, I know that the best words for me to say are the best words that this Lamborghini driver can hear, then I'm going to choose my words differently than if I'm approaching a nurturer or a knowledge, the N and the K in bank. Because we all speak different languages intuitively. And what we do is we speak our own language. We speak our personality type, which means the other 75% of the time, they aren't hearing our words because they're not our personality type. You got a 1 in 4 chance most of the time of getting it right. You actually have a 1 in 24 chance if you do the math on how many different bank code combinations there are. You got a 1 in 24 chance of getting it right. Those odds suck, especially if you're in sales, customer service, or any kind of industry where you're doing public service. And so understanding the bank code and knowing, if you knew Erica's personality type, we give you a script. We give you 12 values that Erica has. And you can use that as your script, any of those 12 values. And those words will resonate really well with her brain, which on the neuroscience side tells Amy, you're not an enemy. So if you jot this URL down, it's really, really, really simple. crackmycode.com. crackmycode.com/victory, because I want you to have victory in your life. crackmycode.com/victory. That's going to make it completely free for you. And I'll do something else. I'll see when you do your assessment, I'll see it come through, and I get a slightly different report than you get. For you and your listeners, when you do your bank code assessment, I will send you this extra report for free. Now, the last thing I'll say is this. You need to do each other's. Don't do your own. When you're in a relationship, as an example, I had Diane do my bank code. I did hers. Here's why. Oftentimes, we tend to fool ourselves. We sort these 4 value cards of the 4 personality types in an order of how we want to show up or how we think we should show up, what other people expect from us, or how we'd like our life to be, not how we really make decisions. You guys, when you do Erica's does yours, you're going to be like cold-hearted honest. You're going to be like, oh no, this is how you make decisions. And that's really what the criteria is. How do you make decisions? What values do you use when you're living your day-to-day life?
Yeah, thank you so much for providing that resource. We'll be sure to put that in the description so anyone who wants to take that test can do it.
I'm still curious on that example that you provided where the red Ferrari driver. Would you want to end that story because it's still in my head? Like, what happened next?
How do you actually speak to
Yeah,
him?
like how do you handle that situation?
Yeah. So I'll say this, and I'll be completely vulnerable and honest with you. This was at a period in my career where I had the opinion, the mindset that if a citizen did not file a formal complaint against me, that was a successful interaction. And that's not the way policing should be done. And I'm very, very, very clear on this when I teach new police officers in the academy and when I teach senior police officers as well. The criteria should be and has to be when that citizen walks away from a law enforcement officer, or that person walks away from a firefighter or a medic, or they drop them off at the hospital, or when that nurse discharges the patient, do they now have the highest opinion possible of your law enforcement agency, of your hospital, of your school, whatever industry you're in? Do they have the highest opinion possible of you? Because if not, you have failed in your public service or customer service job. You've not done what you need to do. And I guarantee you, when they walk away, they don't trust you as much as they could. And that means a lot of different things in a lot of different ways that your minds can all fill in the gaps on that. So that encounter that day with that Lamborghini driver, yes, he left with a ticket. Yes, he left with something that I normally didn't do, which was a lecture. Normally it was a lecture or a ticket. That was my standard in my career. Occasionally I violated that. That day I did. He got a lecture and a ticket, which is, honestly, it's not fair to him. If he's getting the ticket, he's getting the ticket. He doesn't need a lecture to go on top of it. But the way he came across to me triggered me into survival state, fight, flight, or freeze. And I didn't run and I didn't freeze. So how would it go today? The very first thing I would say as I was walking up and I heard, just write the ticket. I would say, your time is hugely valuable to you, and I'm going to get you on your way as soon as I can. I understand that you think you're doing everything good. Makes perfect sense. Let me check your driver's license, make sure it's valid, and then we'll go from there. By the way, do you happen to have your registration proof of insurance with you? If you don't worry about it. I can speed up the process and I can check it on the computer in my car. What I do guarantee you is I'll get you out of here as quick as I can. Because what I've just done to him, I've acknowledged that I understand that he thinks he's doing everything good because there are no rules. Time is valuable. Fun, freedom, flexibility. He doesn't want to be held there any longer than necessary. And I'm going to make the encounter as pleasant as possible and as quick as possible. So what I've done is I've spoken the language he can best hear. I've also acknowledged on the emotional labeling side that I know he doesn't want to be there, and that's an emotion that he's feeling. I've also offered an option of speeding things up even faster by checking on the computer if he doesn't have it handy, which normally actions don't. A blueprint has in their glove box an envelope labeled registration 2023 or 2024 or whatever the year is, and inside they've got their registration, current proof of insurance because they print it out every 6 months, and any other paperwork in that little envelope that might be needed, but at a bare minimum, the registration, proof of insurance, and it's probably on top of everything in the glove box, so it's easily accessible. Because that's how blueprints think. In action, they're going to look over and go, how do I even open up the glove box? Oh, wait, I do know that button because I got my weed stuffed in there.
But the question is, is he still getting the ticket?
So I'll say this. When you look at whether or not somebody gets a ticket or not, this will be okay. Give me a second here. I want to shorten this down. I'm a professor at our college here in San Diego, one of the colleges here, and I always teach my college students how to get out of a ticket. So I'll share this with you very briefly and for your listeners as well. So anytime you get stopped, and there's one exception to this, and there are some officers, and they ride motorcycles, that their job is to go out and write as many tickets as possible. It literally does not matter who you are. The likelihood of you getting a ticket from a motorcycle officer is just incredibly high, like 98%. Now, all the other police officers out on the road, unless that's their job, they're working a special detail, like they call them click it or ticket. They're special enforcement details. Unless they're working that, where again, their job is to write seatbelt tickets to get people to wear their seatbelts and make people safer. Those special assignments also are like with the motor officers. Their job is to go out and write tickets. Everybody else, and this is like 95% of the time, everybody else is just out there they're just doing their law enforcement duties. So the reason that they're making the stop is you've done something that your behavior needs to shift. You're typically it's speeding or maybe running a red light or a stop sign. Your behavior needs to shift. So all you have to do is communicate to that law enforcement officer that your behavior is going to shift. Now, in my 30 years as a cop, I rarely made a traffic stop where people didn't lie to me. Now, I'm talking like 99.9% of the time, people are just giving me this line of BS. The people who didn't get tickets were the ones that would go, I'd walk up and I'd go, hey, is everything okay? Which, by the way, I did that later in my career because that shifts the driver into executive state when I'm asking about their safety, because enemies don't do that. If a cop walks up and goes, give me your driver's license, registration, proof of insurance, bam, that driver is deeper into survival state than they were before. But a cop who walks up and goes, is everything okay? Immediately shifts the driver's brain. So that's what I would do. And I teach law enforcement officers how to make better traffic stops, by the way, because that's the first part of de-escalation in law enforcement. And then if the driver goes, yeah, I've got everything here. You know what, officer, I'm going to tell you right up front. I know why you stopped me. I was speeding. I don't know. I wasn't paying attention, or I was running late for work and I shouldn't have been driving that fast. I normally don't, but I screwed up. I'm really sorry. I'll pay attention to that in the future. Somebody who didn't lie to me. Ding. Point number one. Somebody who took responsibility for their actions. Ding. Number two, that never happens. Everybody's like, oh, did you see all those other people, how fast they were going? It doesn't matter. I'm here with you. Oh, but all those other people. Yeah, take responsibility for that. So somebody who tells the truth, takes responsibility for their actions, that tells any knuckle dragging cop, well, they're probably going to change their behavior. They don't need a ticket at that point. I hope that helps. So did that Lamborghini driver get a ticket and a lecture? Yes. That day. Today, maybe not. Because see, my interaction with them would be better. because I'm speaking a language they can hear. I'm convincing their Amy, I'm not an enemy. And so we actually have a real conversation, adult to adult, not parent child, adult to adult. And those conversations, I hope that helps.
Yeah, no, it does. Solid tips.
Yeah, very solid tips. Although I could see some people thinking, isn't this kind of mollifying criminals or, sort of downgrading criminal behavior in some way? I could see some people thinking that.
So here's a phrase for you. And when I first heard it, I rebelled, like visceral reaction. Oh, hell no. When I heard this phrase at first, and I've come to fully embrace it. Once I understood, one of my closest friends in my entire life said this to me. She said, Kerry, everybody's doing the best that they can. In any given moment, they're doing the best that they can. I was like, oh, hell no. I've had pure evil behind that cage in my police car. And she said, so let me explain this a little bit. Everybody's doing the best they can in any given moment with where they are in life, with the tools that they have, the knowledge that they have about themselves and about the world. It doesn't mean that they're a great person. It just means for them at that moment, that's the best they got. And if we take a step back and we go, okay, when have I not been the best person in the world, but in that moment, I was doing the best that I could? If I snap at a 5-year-old, am I the best person in the world? No, and I usually feel like crap later. But in that moment, that was the best I had. And what I got to look at is I need to raise that bar. I need to make sure that that doesn't happen again. So with criminal activity, a law enforcement officer might not be able to make sure that doesn't happen again other than by putting somebody in jail. But here's the thing. How we treat them from the moment they see us, that they become aware of our presence, until the moment that that jail door, that cell closes and we walk away, that entire time that we're with them, how we treat them along the way sets everything else up for the next encounter with a jail deputy, with another cop, with another person when they get released from jail and they're walking down the street and somebody accidentally bumps into them on the corner. It changes everything in the trajectory of their life. That's why when I'm at Costco and I say to the cashier, hey, thanks for being so efficient today. You're just like burning through people. You're just like, bam, you're on it. Thank you. Or I get a blood draw for lab tests, and I say to the phlebotomist as she's walking away, hey, thanks for being so skillful. That was a really good stick. You've worked at that. Thanks. Changes the trajectory for that next patient that gets treated, or that next customer that steps up who's not in the space to be able to do that. We literally, the three of us and all your listeners, we have the power. It's an amazing power to make people's lives better or to make them worse. So my question for you ultimately is, if you're doing the best that you can in this moment, can you raise that bar a little bit? So does it mollify or lessen criminal activity? I don't think so. I think it helps make people better. I'd like to think that anyway.
It's a good answer. Yeah.
It's a good answer. And it's funny because we talk about gratitude a lot. So, it may come across with all the training you just gave us on how to use gratitude as a little insincere, but I am really grateful that you came on and spent all this time sharing your wisdom. I think what you're doing is very important. We need more. We need more organizations like IDEA who teach people how to handle conflicts. I think the world could certainly be a better place if everyone had these tools.
Yep.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Thank you for that very genuine compliment. I truly do appreciate it. And it's been great being here with both of you. I'm blessed. I'm very blessed in my life. And it's times like this that that level of how blessed I am just not only got raised, but it also just is more apparent. So thank you for this time together.
And I'll just end with one last question. What is the one thing you wish people would ask you about your work or experience or idea that they never do?
Will this work for me in my situations that I face in my life? The answer to it is yes. And I'll, if it's okay, can I read something to you real quickly? It'll take like
Sure.
6 seconds, 7 seconds. This lady sent me this email, and I'm pausing because I literally, every time I read it, I get choked up. She said, "Hi, my colleague and I sat in on your webinar last Wednesday. We both work in the autism world, and I myself have a 30-year-old son who is profoundly affected by his autism. His language skills are limited, and he's been plagued with challenging behavior since he was very young. I found your workshop to be really eye-opening. We've been to countless behaviorists over the years, and nothing has worked with any certainty. I used your tools with him this weekend with great results. I'm encouraged." The thing I love about that, and literally I have that printed up and it's on my office wall. It's by my desk. Because on those days when I feel like I'm slogging through mud, when I'm feeling kind of low, I read that. That is what keeps me going through the tough times. The ability for somebody who for 30 years searched for answers and didn't find them, and now has hope because she found something that does work. Wow. That's pretty freaking cool. So I wish people would ask, will this work for me? Because it can. It doesn't matter what the situation is. If you're dealing with an unhappy customer who seems resistant about finding a solution, if you're dealing with a stolen parking space at Christmas time, when those are at a premium, you're dealing with a difficult time in your relationship. If you're dealing with the stress, Erica, that you have weighing on your shoulders, I'll be you guys powering through stuff. These techniques work. And again, they're simple. They're easy to remember. They're easy to understand. They're even easier to implement. So that'd be my answer to why I wish people would ask us.
Great.
Makes sense.
That's a great answer. So.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much again. This was really eye-opening.
Yeah.
One of
the
best
yeah.
interviews we've had. So we
that's
appreciate
high compliments.
And we went an hour and a half. So thank you so much for
Yeah, we went over.
for spending all this time with us.
Well, I hope your listeners get some value out of it.
Mm-hmm.
I hope that you two, especially, you're doing great work with your podcast and the amount of information that you're providing for your listeners and your community. And I wish you the very, very best. And if there's ever anything that I can do, you can always reach out to me. Our website, theidea.world, super easy to get to. And it's not .com or .org. It's .world. It's kind of an unusual one, but it's appropriate since we're international. And if any of your listeners want to reach out to us, happy to have a chat with them. And if there's anything I can do for you too personally, I'm happy to do that as well. Thank you for having me on the show.